Well, g'day, fishos. That time of the week again. I tell you what a quick week it's been. But spring is here. How good is it? A little bit colder during the week, but it's warmed back up again nicely. Weekend looks pretty good. Northerly winds. I think it's going to be a-okay for the weekend. Definitely in the estuary and probably offshore looking pretty good at this point in time. So definitely make the most of this spring weather. Get out there and have a go. So what's been happening? Inside the bay, longtails. I tell you what, September we've got longtails in the bay. Now I've been asked what's going on with the longtails in the bay at this time of year. Well, believe it or not, back in the early 90s when I was a kid, that long ago, it was an occurrence that happened every August and September along with the mac tuna. They used to feed on what I reckon was frogmouth pilchards. And I think what's happening is we've had a few sort of floods over the last couple of years, and it's just sort of sparked that bait aggregation inside the bay. But not only that, is the longtails used to get netted, believe it or not, especially in southeast Queensland. They used to get ring netted. They used to happen in New South Wales as well. Now they've stopped all that probably 10, 15 years, and I think it's just obviously a resurgence of the longtail tuna. The mac tuna, however, we used to see plagues proportions of mac tuna inside the bay, and people remember back in the late 80s that we used to chase them on 1 and 2 kilo line inside the bay. Good fun with the old answer days. So I just think it's just that reoccurrence of that sort of fishing, less pressure obviously with the netters and things like that of the longtail. So that's why I reckon we're seeing them. But I think once we get these big nor'easters, once we get towards mid-spring, October-ish, November-ish, that's when we'll see the longtails, I reckon, disappear. Why? Because those nor'easters roll that inshore water over, making it cool, and I reckon that's when the longtails will bugger off. But anyway, let's see what happens. They're still there. Now, to chase those, don't troll through them. Don't motor up to them a million miles an hour. You've got to keep your cool, keep your distance, and cast at them. The armour anchovies, the 18 gram especially armour anchovies are doing the trick on the longtails. Long casts are needed, lighter leaders, 20-pound leaders, and enjoy the fight, that's for sure. So longtails in the bay. Now the flatties are geared up real good now. Water's warmed up. It's been great so far. Very early season for big flatties, which is good. Back half of the bay fishing better. Up the Tilligarry, there's still a little bit of that slime weed around. But just fish your tide changes and get right up in the shallows. And that's where the flatties seem to be at the moment, especially those bigger ones at the moment. So you would have seen the photos we put up on socials early in the week. We got some beauties, so definitely worth a shot there. A few dewies starting getting around there, especially up towards Karoo, but also around Soldiers Point, North Arm Cove area. We're on the lead up now, so we're past the new moon. So we're slowly working to that full moon. So the tides are really good at the moment. They're smaller tides, which I like. So definitely worth a shot or a mulloway or two. Now the bream is still hanging in there. Bream is still hanging in the bay. The good thing is that water warming up, they'll migrate further up the bay and they'll start looking at eating surface lures soon. So I reckon another 3 to 4 weeks and we should start to see a bit of good action on the surface. Same too with the sand whiting. Now, there has been a few sand whiting inside the bay, but I wouldn't say they've hit their straps yet. I reckon another few weeks and they'll certainly be good in the edges around the mangroves on those sand flats. So once we get into that school holidays, that might be the time to target a few whiting, but certainly more to come on that, that's for sure. So that's what's happening inside the bay at the moment. Plenty of action inside the bay. Now, if we move out to the beaches, lots of salmon around. I tell you what, lots and lots of salmon around, which is good to see, from Boxy through to Fingal, down to Samurai 1 Mile, and obviously Berrubi. It's that time of year where we can target the salmon off the beaches. Definitely good fun in the spin rod, great fun for the kids. So enjoy the salmon off the beach. Still a few bream kicking around the beaches, and some good tailor after dark if you're keen on doing that. So the beach is fishing pretty well, although the swell's not that big, but allows you to see those salmon schools, which is pretty good at the moment. Now, off the rocks, young KO sent me a photo during the week of half a longtail tuna. Yep, half a longtail tuna. Why? Because a whaler shark decided he wanted it more than KO. So sharks around this time of year, I've heard reports from some spearfish shows that the whalers are pretty prevalent on the inshore at this time of year. So again, haven't heard of too many whalers at this time of year, but I guess with all the bait out of Port Stephens at the moment, there are a few whaler sharks around. at the moment. So just be careful there if you're having to dive off the rocks at the moment. Drummer around as well, though the swell needs to pick up a little bit, but if you can fish that first light time, you'll definitely get a few pigs off the rocks. And definitely worth a shot at a snapper or two, first light, last light. Throwing plastics off the rocks. You don't have to fish heavy 1/4 ounce jig heads. Don't have to cast far. The fish will be at your feet. Also worth having a bit of a throw, a few stick baits around. It's might be a little bit early, but I reckon there'll be a few kings around at the moment. Usually once we get into October, we see those inshore kings really ramp up, those bigger fish. But it'd be worth throwing a few stick baits or poppers around the rocks at the moment, chasing a kingy or two, that is for sure. If not, you can spin up a few salmon bonito. Yep, a few bonito around and some tailor, that's for sure. Now on the offshore scene, some good reds around. Like I said, we're on that new moon phase, smaller tides. The inshore reefs will fire up with reds at the moment. Definitely fish the early tides, the late tides, and then in the middle of the day, fish that deeper water. So that deeper water seems to fish really well on a tide change, which we'll have middle of the day. Definitely fish that sort of that 35 to 50 metre country. Seems to work really well. You can use Lacanis jigs, things like that. Those squid trexes that Nomo brought out, they do work well, that's for sure, on reds. And even some micro jigging as well. Got some good, nice looking micro jigs in stock at the moment. So some good reds around. A couple of trag here and there as well. So I wouldn't be surprised to get a few trag, especially up the Big Gibber, and then back down wider Boulder Bay and Uralla, places like that. Still worth fishing the washers for a few tailor, salmon, spin the washers, and also a first light snapper if you want to throw a bait in the wash, especially around Little Island, that eastern side of Little Island, Big Island there, and also the front of Fingal at the moment will fish pretty well. And then down towards Little Rocky. Don't disregard Little Rocky down that way. It is a really good snapper spot this time of year, and likewise down off Fisherman's Bay. Now, on the shelf, looking at the current charts, it's a funny current at the moment. It's pushing down from the north, now it's sort of settled again. There's a bit of a altimetry line straight out the front, less current pushing up. And I did hear a whisper out over the shelf. There was a few striped marlins seen late last week before that wind got away. And it wasn't just one or two, it was quite a few feeding on bait balls. Now to the north at Port Macquarie there, wider crescent head on the edge there has been a good striped marlin bite. So it is the start, actually, officially this weekend of the Newcastle and Port Stephens Game Fish Club season. So might be a few boats out there on Sunday having a look around, trying to vie for that first marlin of the season. And I think it'd be worth a shot. If you want to do that, it'd be worth packing the definitely electrics in and having a bit of a fish on the edge of the shelf. It looks like it's going to be one of those weekends that could be pretty good to fish for barcod. Less current, and obviously winds light northerly, so it could be worth having a deep drop, maybe putting a few skip baits in, having a skip bait around for an early season striped marlin. So definitely worth a shot. Anyway, that's it for this week's report. It's looking pretty good. Enjoy that warm weather. I know I'm going to. Get out there and amongst those flatties inside the bay. We'll talk next week.